Welcome back. In this video, we're looking at a husband and wife involved murder case. At one point, it appeared as if the death in this case was from natural causes, but later, that turned out not to be true. What unfolded in this case was one of the most controversial cases coming out of the state of Texas. It is the story of a woman who weaved a tangled web, leaving a trail of shattered marriages in her past. Let's get into the video. In January 2023, a 46-year-old man was rushed to a Texas hospital after being found unresponsive in his home. He was diabetic. His blood sugar had crashed. At first glance, it looked like a tragic medical emergency, but hospital staff didn't believe what they were seeing made sense. What followed was not just a murder investigation, but the unraveling of a woman's entire past. 5 marriages, a fatal shooting once ruled self-defense, allegations of murder plots, arson and manipulation stretching back years, and at the center of it all, Sarah Jean Hartsfield, a former U.S. Army sergeant. This is the story of how she went from grieving wife to a suspect responsible for her husband's death, and then to a convicted murderer serving life in prison, primarily because of the persistence of a rookie detective, just 6 weeks into the job, who refused to let the case be quietly closed. Sarah Hartsfield's early life and military career. Sarah Hartsfield served in the United States Army for nearly 2 decades. She first enlisted as Sarah Donahue in the early 1990s and re-enlisted again in 2007. During her military career, she worked in a variety of roles, including intelligence analysis, logistics, training, and pharmacy-related duties. During her time in the Army, she was once deployed to Iraq from 2007 to 2008. By the time she left the Army, she had risen to the prestigious rank of Sergeant First Class. She had done well for herself, coming from a background where she grew up in the foster care system and was an alleged victim of abuse. Former partners and family members described her as highly intelligent, disciplined, and commanding. Someone used to control and authority. Those traits, prosecutors would later argue, didn't disappear when she left the military. Her time in uniform also gave her a working familiarity with medications, systems, documentation, and procedure, knowledge that would later become deeply relevant. By the time of Joseph Hartsfield's death, Sarah had been married 5 times. Almost every relationship ended badly, some ended violently. 5 marriages, and all with a common thread. Sarah's first marriage ended in divorce amid allegations of intimidation and harassment. Years later, the new wife of her first husband testified that she caught Sarah near a trailer, doused in gasoline in the middle of the night, a claim Sarah has denied and was never charged over. Titus Nornschild met Sarah when he was a junior at the local high school he attended in the small town he was from in Missouri. They married 2 years later, but by 1996, the marriage ended in divorce. By his account, their marriage ended horribly. He further claims that his family have been watching their backs ever since, as she kept popping up into their lives. He has been quoted as saying, "She was like a bad penny. Every time you'd turn around, she'd be there. She doesn't do it to confront you. She does it to remind you she's there." While they were separating, Nornschild said, she appeared to threaten him. "I'm very surprised I got out of the marriage alive," he said. Nornschild's wife, Angela, said Hartsfield remained an unwanted presence in their lives in the decades after her husband's divorce. Her second marriage was very brief, and not much is known about what transpired. Her second husband, Michael Traxler, said in a brief interview that the marriage was super short, and he hasn't spoken to her in years. Her third marriage, to Christopher Donahue, lasted nearly 2 decades and produced children. Donahue met Sarah in Alaska, and they wed in 1999. They were stationed in Fort Hood, Texas, where they spent most of their married life. The marriage ended in 2017 after Donahue filed for divorce. But even after their separation, Sarah remained deeply entangled in his life. They had children together and got embroiled in a custody battle. According to testimony, Sarah allegedly asked her 4th husband, David George, to kill Donahue's new wife. The alleged plot included surveillance, travel across state lines, the purchase of a firearm, and was reported to the FBI. An application for a protective order was filed by her third husband in 2021 on his behalf, his new wife, and two of the daughters he shares with Sarah. Donahue alleged that she attempted to force her fourth husband to kill his new wife, so that he would be too busy dealing with the death to focus on fighting for his girls anymore. From information in an affidavit, it was alleged that at the end of 2020, the fourth husband said he had a pistol that was given to him by Sarah to carry out the act. According to the affidavit, Sarah was accused of saying she would not allow her fourth husband back home until he killed the woman. George once drove to Donahue's home under the guise of delivering flowers, and the interaction was captured on home security video. Her children allegedly overheard that conversation discussing the plot. Federal prosecutors ultimately declined charges after husband number 4 recanted his statement. Then there was David Bragg. They were engaged within months of getting into a relationship. It seemed to be going well, and they appeared to be a couple in love with each other. In 2018, Sarah shot and killed Bragg, her fiancé at the time. She claimed self-defense. Prosecutors initially agreed. The case was ruled justified. According to Sarah, she fought with David about her former husband, wanting to see the children they had together. She said the argument got extremely heated, so she left the house with her children. She claims she later returned to the home to gather a few things and had 2 guns for her protection. Sarah gave testimony via Zoom from inside the Chambers County Jail, claiming that he pointed a gun at her, and she dove onto the stairs to avoid the gunfire. She said she returned fired blindly and hit David. Douglas County Attorney Chad Larson cleared her in the shooting, saying she had no reasonable possibility of retreating from Bragg. Bragg's family have always felt that justice wasn't served and don't believe Sarah's versions of events. David's brother said that Sarah's description doesn't sound like something his brother would do. Daniel said his brother was planning to break off their relationship at the time he was killed, and he told their father that he was fearful something bad might happen to him. Years later, after Joseph Hartsfield's death, that shooting was reopened. No charges have been filed, but investigators testified the circumstances were abnormal. Sarah married for the 4th time roughly 1 year after her fiancé's death. Hartsfield married David George, who worked for a gas company in Minnesota. They apparently were living in the same home where she killed Bragg. As mentioned before, Sarah got entangled in a bitter dispute with her third husband while married to George. The dispute stemmed from a custody battle for the 2 youngest of the children they shared. As a result of the animosity between them, her third husband had applied for an order of protection. A judge granted the order on June 7, 2021, and barred Hartsfield from contacting her ex-husband or his family for 2 years. By the time the order was issued, Hartsfield had already filed to divorce George, her 4th husband, court records show. Joseph Hartsfield became Sarah's 5th and so far final husband. Sarah married Joseph Hartsfield in early 2022 after the two had met online. Friends and family said the relationship moved quickly and deteriorated just as fast. In late 2022, Joseph opened a separate bank account and told relatives he planned to leave Sarah. Days before his death, he told his sister he was afraid his wife might kill him in his sleep. It has been reported that Facebook messages were obtained showing Sarah referring to him as a nightmare, even telling a friend she had a plan to get out of her marriage. On January 6, 2023, Joseph came home from work and a job interview. After eating a meal prepared by Sarah, Joseph went to bed. While he slept, his Dexcom glucose monitor began sounding alarms. They would continue sounding for hours. Joseph's blood sugar dropped to dangerously low levels and stayed there. Medical experts testified that once glucose drops below 54, a patient cannot self-correct. Consciousness fades. Brain damage begins. Joseph's Dexcom alarms reportedly sounded over 100 times. Sarah later claimed she was asleep on narcotic pain medication, so she was unaware when the alarm started. Phone data showed she was awake, active, messaging, shopping online, searching the internet. She waited roughly an hour after finding Joseph unresponsive before calling 911. Sarah told investigators that she had gone to get him juice and jam, and when she returned to their bedroom, he had vomited on himself. By the time help arrived, he was already brain damaged. He would die days later. Detective Skylar Rotz had been a detective for 6 weeks on the day she attended to this case. This was her first call-out. Hospital staff told her something wasn't right. A nurse who was treating him suspected foul play because Joseph's blood sugar levels continued to drop, even though he had been given glucose to raise them. Rotz noticed Sarah's behavior immediately, emotionally inconsistent, joking, detached. She searched the home and found 8 to 10 insulin pens near the bed. She later admitted failing to seize them, something she has publicly said she regrets. Supervisors told her she was chasing nothing. However, something just didn't sit right about the whole thing, so she didn't listen. Rotz continued with her investigation into the matter. She obtained phone data. It contradicted Sarah's statements at every turn. Apple movement data showed activity during hours Sarah claimed to be asleep. Internet searches included insulin-related medical questions. Safari history had been deleted. Messages were sent from Joseph's phone to Sarah's containing his ID, bank details, Apple legacy contact access. Roxy testified she believes Sarah created the legacy contact herself, granting access to Joseph's phone after death. Sarah even sent a video of Joseph gasping to her daughter, then deleted it. With all the suspicious behavior and mounting evidence that contradicted her account of events, Sarah was arrested and charged. The district attorney was contacted, and the case was later presented to a grand jury. On February 3, 2023, Sarah was indicted on a felony murder charge. She pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors argued the case wasn't about one moment, but a pattern of behavior. Defense attorneys said there was no direct proof Sarah injected insulin. The prosecution made claims that Sarah had a hatred for Joseph, and he planned to leave her. They asserted that Joseph's blood sugar dropped dangerously low for hours, and Sarah delayed calling 911 by at least an hour. The prosecution claimed that Joseph didn't die of natural causes, and that Sarah intentionally caused his death. The defense argued that the medical examiner ruled Joseph's manner of death as undermined, and that Joseph neglected to manage his diabetes. They claimed that shock from what had occurred is what caused Sarah's delay in calling 911. Her defense made the argument that she denied administering his insulin that day, and while she could have responded better, she can't be criminally liable for her failure to act.
Obvious and natural thing to her, and she murdered him.
We definitively don't know that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. Miss Vargas has told you that.
Those who have testified include Sarah and Joseph's families, investigators, medical experts, and other people tied to incidents from Sarah's past. During her closing argument, Chambers County Assistant District Attorney Mallory Vargas told the jurors that Sarah had thought she had gotten away with Joseph's murder, because it was what she always done. The defense suggested that the prosecution had no evidence that Sarah had committed murder, and that the past allegations raised do not conclude that she is a bad person, capable of doing so. The jury deliberated for about an hour, after a trial that lasted 7 days. In October 2025, Sarah Hartsfield was convicted of first-degree murder. Before sentencing, Sarah's defense pleaded with the jurors to consider Sarah's background, that she grew up in the foster care system, was allegedly abused by a family member. They asked to consider that she was a veteran, then served her country for about 20 years in the Army. The defense also asked the jury to consider that she is a mother of 4 children, needs time to reflect on her actions and study the Bible, and that she hopes to see her children again in her old age. She was sentenced to life in prison. Joseph's sister, John, delivered an emotional victim impact statement after the sentencing. She began by saying she initially liked Sarah, expressing regret over how things unfolded. She described Sarah as a master manipulator who has left behind a lasting trail of destruction. Jean said there is no excuse for the irreversible damage Sarah caused to their family, and accused Sarah of being jealous of their family's bond and love. Joseph's sister said directly to Sarah, "You chose the wrong brother to kill." Jean also recalled speaking to Joseph on the phone while he was in the hospital before he died. "I made a promise to Joe I would do everything possible to fight for him, and I did that. So did many other family members," she said. She spoke to Sarah with a message of both accountability and hope. "I'll pray for your soul, and pray you won't be the monster you are now," John said. "You didn't defeat us. We keep Joe alive in our memories," John added. One of the most disturbing aspects of the trial came from Sarah's own children. Multiple daughters testified that they were afraid of their mother. They described volatile mood swings, emotional manipulation, and being instructed to lie to police. One daughter said Sarah demanded she change her story after the Bragg shooting. Another testified that Sarah gave her medications she wasn't prescribed, sedatives, muscle relaxers, telling her she needed to calm down. They described watching their mother stand over Bragg's body, emotionally flat, moments after he was shot. Several children said they had cut off contact with Sarah long before Joseph's death. By the time of the trial, none of them were on her side. Sarah's own brother, Cody Smith, gave testimony in court that he believed his sister in 2014 intentionally set fire to the house their grandmother left to him after her death. He was asleep in the house with a nephew when it went up in flames. They managed to survive, but the house was fully demolished and the family's dog was lost in the fire. Sarah Hartsfield is incarcerated at the William P. Hobby Unit in Texas. She has already filed appeals against her sentence. Some of the incidents from her past remain open. Detective Skylar Rotz now works for the District Attorney's Office. What began as a suspicious illness became one of the most disturbing true crime cases in recent Texas history, not because of what happened once, but because of what may have been happening all along.
The legacy stood out a lot to people. The fact that, it's 5 a.m., he's already been comatose for maybe 10 hours.
If you want more in-depth breakdowns of real cases like this, consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment, as we would love to hear from you. Like and share, it goes a long way to help the channel grow. And as always, thank you for watching. See you next time.